4 years I'm established in Canada together with my family. So at the moment I'm doing my PhD in law program at the University of Ottawa in Canada. In the past, I worked with the United Nations, non-governmental organizations on issues of human rights and gender equality. And I'm happy to be today with you to talk about gender mainstreaming and gender analysis. So that's briefly about me. Shall I continue with the presentation itself?
Yes, so we each of us, we will have 20 seconds of introductions. So my name is Thang. I'm director of the Center for Social Innovation and Entrepreneurship under the National Economic University, and also I am lead researcher of the Vietnam Research Institute for Innovation and Development. So nice to meeting you. I'm the one who hosts the event today. Okay. So Miss Hang, please, next.
Hello everyone, my name is Hang, and I am working on gender mainstreaming and gender analysis, and I am actually focusing on women economic empowerment. So I'm very happy today to be with you and to listen to all of you and networking. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks.
Mr. Phúc, please.
Okay, thank you. So good morning, good day, everyone. So I'm Phúc, medical doctor by training. I'm the lead in the research center on public health and ecosystem research. Nice to meet all of you today. Thank you.
I guess it's my turn. Hi everyone. My name is Lan Nông Hương Lan. And I am working for Oxfam in Vietnam as a program admin officer. And previously I studied a Master of Development Studies and specialized in gender in the University of Melbourne, Australia.
Great.
And nice to meet all of you.
It's nice to see you. Miss Nguyen, can you turn on the camera and you introduce yourself, please?
Everyone, my name is Nhật Anh. Now I'm a researcher on environmental issues in an NGO, local NGO of Vietnam, and I also work. My NGO is have several related projects in the gender, and it is the reason why I want to participate in this meeting, and I want to know about the top-down approach and bottom-up approach in gender analysis, because our project is mainly bottom-up approach, and we have one project which comes from an organization from Thailand. They use the community-based approach to raise the local woman voice. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Mr. Quang, can you please turn on the camera and you speak to all of people?
Hi everyone, and hi Professor Slava. My name is Quang and I'm come from Vietnam. Currently I study PhD in innovation and entrepreneurship in Hanyang University in Korea, and I'm attending this to understand about the gender analysis and many terminology to understand how the student will conduct the research of innovation and entrepreneurship that related to gender characteristics. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So shall we start now?
I just want to interrupt a little bit. It's Trang Phạm. Is it at Hanyang University that they have the SSIR in Korea, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because actually at VID we are working with Stanford Social Innovation Review to have a Vietnamese language of the SSIR in Vietnam. And actually, Hanyang University, the Center for Social Innovation, they also had the SSIR in Korean. They are the one who who published the Korean version of SSIR, just to share. Yeah.
Great. So shall we start?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So just first of all, 2 remarks before I start with my presentation. Actually, 3 remarks. Number one, I'm well aware that my English might not sound easy sometimes. So whenever you just don't understand me, raise a hand or let me know. I'm very happy. Will be very happy just to repeat or rephrase whatever I will be saying. So second, we have just 2+ hours. So obviously within 2+ hours, we wouldn't be able to kind of really dig deep enough into the gender mainstreaming and gender analysis. In Canada, people are doing masters, like year-long masters on these issues. So you can imagine that there is much more to discuss and learn about this. But we will try to touch on the basic points. And if some of the issues or more issues would be of interest to you, we can continue with the next training on the issues which would be particularly of importance to you. And number 3, although I will be using the PowerPoint presentation, actually I'm very enthusiastic when we interact. So I will be putting some questions to you throughout the presentation. So please feel free to respond. I mean, don't be shy. Again, there is no right and wrong answer. Everyone has, a life. Everyone has an experience. Everyone shares based on his or her own experience. So please feel free to just respond to some of these questions or provide a comment. I'm much more fond of offline trainings because it's much more lively and much more engaging. But in this current situation, I'm afraid we have to use whatever we have, and that's the online communication. So please, let's try animate our training and make it as interactive as possible. Okay, with this, I will start my PowerPoint presentation, and please just let me know whether you will see the slide of this presentation, because previous time there were some technical issues. So I just want to be sure that I will not speak without having you with me. Okay. So do you see now the presentation? If you can just say by voice.
Yep.
Yes, you do. Right. Okay. Okay.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet.
Just in a minute, please.
Okay.
Dạ vâng, thì rất chào mừng mọi người đến với cả bộ hội thảo Gender Mainstreaming và Gender Analysis ngày hôm nay. Bộ hội thảo sẽ diễn ra dưới hình thức ngôn ngữ là cả bằng cả tiếng Anh và cả tiếng Việt. Nên trong suốt quá trình diễn ra buổi hội thảo, nếu mọi người có những câu hỏi gì mà mọi người chưa hiểu cho lắm thì mọi người có thể ấn vào nút raise hand để mọi người phát biểu ý kiến của mình, hoặc là mình có thể bàn luận trực tiếp bằng tiếng Việt, sau đó sẽ dịch lại sang tiếng Anh và gửi lại cho anh Slava để thành những câu hỏi của mọi người. Nên không có bất cứ gì mọi người phải lo về vấn đề ngôn ngữ trong buổi hội thảo ngày hôm nay cả. Những nhân sự của VID sẽ hết sức giúp đỡ mọi người trong quá trình buổi hội thảo diễn ra.
Xin lỗi Tuấn Minh, Tuấn Minh, nhưng mà vấn đề là bây giờ chúng ta phải check lại mọi người có cần hỗ trợ ngôn ngữ không? Vấn đề là như thế nữa, đúng không ạ?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can somebody just explain what's going on?
Just introduction to everybody that
okay, sorry.
These 2 languages in this webinar. So
okay. So you will be translating.
Yeah.
You will be translating everything with what I will be saying.
Just anything that people are concerned about. And I
okay. Okay. So should I make like pauses after my words? Or not
just
really.
Just be yourself.
So how you help to translate then? You will type or you will interrupt the speaking?
Okay, first I will ask the audience, because I will be like the main, let's say, translator, interpreter in this webinar. So trước hết em xin phép được hỏi cô và các anh chị là mọi người có nghĩa là kiểu trong cái quá trình nếu trong cái quá trình mình kiểu tham gia cái buổi training này, nếu mà mọi người có cần những chỗ nào cần kiểu nói chậm lại, anh ấy nói chậm lại, dừng lại để giải thích, hoặc là cần gọi là hỗ trợ ngôn ngữ mặt tiếng Việt, tiếng Anh, thì mọi người có thể raise hand hoặc type vào chat, thì chúng em sẽ dựa vào đấy để điều phối ạ. Dạ, em cảm ơn mọi người.
Okay. Nhưng mà về cơ bản mình có tóm tắt cái phần nói của anh ấy trong cái phần chat không, hay là mình sẽ chỉ khi nào mọi người có yêu cầu thì chúng ta mới làm, để make sure là mọi thứ nó rõ.
Thực ra thì đây thì em nghĩ là để cho kiểu mọi thứ gọi là diễn ra một cách suôn sẻ và kiểu nó mượt mà ấy, thì em nghĩ là mình sẽ chỉ dừng lại khi mà mọi người cần phải kiểu cần có những chỗ nào cần giải thích ạ. Thì nếu mọi người cứ tự nhiên và thoải mái kiểu raise hand hoặc là kiểu type vào chat. Không biết là kiểu các anh, cô và các anh chị còn gọi là có những cái yêu cầu hoặc là có những cái gì muốn thảo luận trước khi mình bắt đầu cái buổi training không ạ?
Bản thân mình thì mình đề xuất là nếu mà có thể thì ban tổ chức typing tóm tắt lại cái nội dung ấy, thế thì nó cứ xuyên suốt luôn, thay vì là tự nhiên nó bị interrupt bởi tất nhiên mọi người có thể đặt câu hỏi tới đây cho anh Slava, tuy nhiên thì mình nghĩ là nên có kiểu dịch tóm tắt ở bên cạnh trong chat box, thế là được, và anh ấy vẫn cứ đi theo cái dòng của mình, đỡ bị cái câu chuyện là bị cắt nội dung ấy.
Dạ vâng, thế thì chúng em sẽ gọi là recap lại ở trong phần chat box ạ. Nếu mọi người cần reference thì mọi người có thể nhìn vào chat box nữa. Vâng, thế thì em nghĩ là chúng ta sẽ bắt đầu cái buổi training ngày hôm nay được rồi.
Okay, thank you, Slava. Actually, we agree now how the language will be translated in the chat box.
So do I proceed without stops, or should I stop after each big piece?
No, you don't need to stop. Just if someone
raises their
hand to ask questions.
Okay, fine. And do you see now my presentation, PowerPoint presentation on your screens?
Yes.
Or you see myself?
Yes.
You see the presentation, right?
Yes, of course.
Okay. The slide which reads gender mainstreaming and gender analysis, just the title, right?
Sorry, Slava. I can see your slide here. Just see you.
Just me.
Yeah.
Nhưng ban tổ chức có thể kiểu pin cái đây gì đó để
Okay, so let me try once again then. Connecting to this presentation. Yeah, I'm sorry. With these Teams, it's a bit more complicated, but that's fine. That's fine. I will be doing like that. Do you see it now? Do you see the PowerPoint? No? You still see me?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Okay, once again, let me try. Okay, now I understand. Share. Okay, now you should see the PowerPoint. You see it now, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So the first slide, right?
Yes, we see now. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's start then. So today training is basically a follow-up training to the previous one, which was about the introduction into gender equality. So kind of it builds on what those of you who were present, what we discussed last time. However, before we go straight into the gender mainstreaming and gender analysis, just a very, very brief recapitulation of the gender equality concepts, so the key concepts. But before this recapitulation, if I may just, start with this small interactive part and ask you, what do you think of the picture which you see on your screens now? Just feel free to speak, whomever would like to speak.
Yeah, I see clearly, the starting point for men and women, but, there's a barrier in front of women. It's the household work, right?
Yeah.
Only
Yeah.
household work. Yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of main idea would you kind of draw from this picture if just to put it in one proposition? How would you call this picture? Actually, you see in the right top corner, it's called kind of meritocracy. It's in Spanish. Meritocracia, but is this about meritocracy?
Yeah, we can see the starting point between men and women. So we call it the gender constraint.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, basically this is kind of the picture to, in very brief, introduce in the topics which we will be discussing today. And it's exactly about the kind of the gender barriers and gender gaps which women in most cases face in their life. And basically what this picture is also telling about, that gender equality is not about giving everyone the same, because you see here on the picture, everybody is kind of standing in front of the same line. So kind of everybody is could be pretended to be called standing on the same position, on equal position. But if we look, of course, ahead, if we look on what each of these groups of people face ahead, we can understand that even if we thought of being equal, like on paper or in the documents, there are many elements in our life, social constraints in our case, which actually undermine this idea of equality, or so-called formal equality. So now let me go into these 2-3 slides which recapitulate about the gender equality, what has been discussed during the previous training. So gender equality is very simply is when women and men enjoy equal and equitable, actually, opportunities, powers, and resources for conducting an interesting and happy life. So that's if we would put the idea of gender equality in a nutshell, or in one proposition. So why do we need gender equality? Gender equality does many good things. So gender equality makes families happier. Gender equality makes everyone healthier. Everyone means women and men. Gender equality makes businesses and the economy more productive and successful. Gender equality brings innovation, creativity, diversity, and gender equality is an international standard and universal principle to which Vietnam actually subscribed by ratifying many of the international treaties. So when we discuss gender equality, there are kind of several key concepts which need to be understood or need to be retained. So first, there is a difference between sex and gender. So sex is usually sex is about biological characteristics which kind of distinguish kind of men from women. So we all know that the bodies have some differences, and these biological characteristics, when we speak about them, we refer to the sex. Gender refers to the socially constructed and attributed characteristics of women and men. So basically, gender is what the society and ourselves, what we think of what does it mean to be a man or a woman. And gender identity is how we self-identify and self-feel ourselves. We could self-identify ourselves as women, men. Some people identify themselves as agender, some as non-binary, and so on and so forth. I'd like just to stop here for half a minute and ask, are we all kind of on the same page on the differences between sex, gender, and about gender identity? Just very briefly tell me yes, no, and that's it.
Yes.
Or should we stop here a little bit? No? Okay. So everyone is fine with understanding the difference between the two?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay, good. So just to make this very clear line, sex is about biology. Gender is a social construct. Basically, gender are social beliefs of what does it mean to be a woman or a man. Gender basically involves some characteristics which are being assigned to women and men. So basically, when we speak about gender, we basically discuss what does it mean to be a woman or to be a real woman or a real man. So what kind of the characteristics, what type of the behaviors should a person manifest to be considered a man or a woman? And gender roles are basically these kind of sets of attributes and behaviors which are associated with a gender. So when we speak about like to be a woman means to do this, this, and this, or to be a man means to do that and that. So these are kind of the assigned gender roles, the roles which are socially attributed to women and men. Gender identity, as we just mentioned, is how do we feel ourselves? And here there is an important issue which we need kind of to keep in mind. There are some people who are biologically born in a body of a woman or a man, but self-identify themselves differently, not as the body which they have. So basically, sex and gender, in many cases, they coincide in people, but there are situations and cases when they do not coincide. So they do not necessarily, they are not necessarily the same in all of the people. When we look at sex and gender, we can kind of distinguish, so to say, two types of views on sex and gender. So in the past times, kind of the traditional view on sex and gender is that sex should determine the social and gender role and place of women and men in the society. So basically, if you were born in the body of a woman or in the body of a man, you should behave as a woman and as a man. That's kind of this traditional old-time views. So the modern time views, the views which are based on human rights and the concepts of gender equality, they say kind of the opposite, that sex does not need to determine social roles and place. So there is no this direct link between sex and gender. As I just mentioned, sex or your biological body should not determine what you do in your life or what you expected to be doing in the society or in the family. So there is no this direct link, there is no this rigid connection between the biological configuration of your body and what you expected to do in your life or in the society. So are we clear on that? Please just let me know. Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. If somebody wants to discuss, just let me know. Or if you want to take time to translate in Vietnamese, just stop me.
Can I have a questions?
Yes, please.
Like I understand you mentioned about the traditional views and the modern views, but
Yeah.
I have I think maybe it's not like the modern view. It's not sex does not determine social role, but can we flip it in another way? Is in the modern view, the social role and place does not distinguish between sex. It means that the social
I'm not
role
sure
is
I understood it. Could you just repeat once again? Yes, please.
Yeah, it means that the social role now, it does not distinguish by sex. It's the other way around.
Yeah, so basically the idea, yes, the idea of the modern time views is that the sex or the biological configuration of your body should not predetermine, should not basically make you to undertake a particular social role or particular place in the society. So the modern view basically breaks this this direct link between the sex, between the body which you got from birth, and what you should do in the society.
What I mean is, it does not because of the sex, but because the social role now, the definition of the social role is not like, how can I say it, more unisex in the social role. It's not just the direct link to the sex.
Well, social roles, yes. Social roles, vice versa, is also true. So the sex does not determine the social roles, and the social roles, because this link is now disrupted, social roles are also not predetermined by the sex. Yes, this is true. So social roles actually should be, according to the gender equality and human rights approach, should be the free and informed choice of each and every individual. However, people, when they are kind of taking these decisions on what to do in their life, what social role they should take, some of the people still can basically draw from their, I don't know, from their body, from their sex. So some people actually truly believe that their kind of birth-given body is an asset which helps them fulfill some social roles. So basically, it's fine for people to believe like that. What is not fine is that people are constrained, that the people are made to do something in life just because they have a particular body, like a woman's body or a man's body. So it shouldn't be predetermined by your body, but it should be the matter of your choice, of your own decision, what you want to do with your life and with your body in your life. Does it respond to your question?
Yes, thanks. I just want to put in the thing that is not, I do not see the, how can I say, the two ways of the linking between the sex and the social roles, but also the social role have the other way around to affect the sex. It's not just because it just directly not linked to the sex, but also it's the changes in the social role definition itself.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, of course, social roles, they also change. That's true. Yeah, I mean, both concepts changed. So the concept of sex, of relation between sex and social roles has changed, so in the modern view, but also the social roles have changed. This is true. These are mutually kind of influencing processes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so just if we look at these traditional gender roles, if we look on how men and women were viewed in the human societies, yeah, I mean, everywhere across the globe, not just in Vietnam, but everywhere, in Canada, in Europe, everywhere. So traditional and historically, in the past, men and women were somewhat assigned, given certain specific roles. And usually the distribution was like that men should be the breadwinners and protectors of the family, of the land. They should be strong and in leading positions. Women were supposed, were assigned to be housekeepers, caregivers for children. They were expected to be beautiful and accommodating of men, basically serving men. So that's how traditionally women and men were viewed in the past. And with such an approach, there are many problems. When we kind of take this traditional gender approach, there are at least three big problems. In most cases, this assignment of roles is not based on free and informed choice. So basically, what happened in the past and what is still happening in many traditional societies is that boys and girls in the childhood, through various means, are basically made to believe that boys should behave in a particularly men's ways, that they should be strong, should be leaders, that they should, think on how to win the livelihood for their entire family. And girls are kind of trained in the family and in the wider society that they should basically think about the family, about taking care of house, and about being a good wife for the husband. So basically, it's not that the girls and the boys are given the choice from the very beginning. They are basically constantly told that the only right way is this way, that women should be traditionally that and men or boys should be traditionally this. So there is no choice in between in this traditional approach to the distribution of the gender roles. Second problem is that this assignment of roles is not equal in many cases in terms of the workload. So even though some traditional thinkers believe that everybody has his or her place, that okay, men do this hard work of winning the livelihood for families, and women have their part in life, and men always say, but you know, it's a kind of equal distribution of workload. It's not true. In modern societies, and there are many statistical data which show that women usually work more than the men. So women have less free time. Very often women basically do the double work. In addition to their usual work outside the house, like their professional work, women kind of do the second load of work when they return home. So they basically do this double load of work at home as house workers. And the third problem with this traditional gender roles distribution is that this approach presumes just one single standard role for women and men. So basically, this approach says there is one single way how the women should be, and there is one single way how the men should be. What's the result? What is the result of this traditional view on gender roles? So first of all, many women and men live a life not of their choice. So they basically live a life with not the way they wanted their life to be, because boys and girls from the very beginning are kind of hammered this idea that you as a boy should be assertive, strong, you should look for the best career opportunities, for the ways to earn a lot of money. And because girls are kind of taught to be beautiful, to seek their occupations around the house and take care of kids, many adult women and men in the Middle Ages or later realized that that was not the life they wanted to have. Actually, they wanted to have a different life. So this traditional approach basically breaks people's lives, makes many people unhappy. This distribution of role also causes a lot of distress, depression, crisis, aggression, and violence, causing a lot of harm to life and health of women and men. So basically, you know, if there are expectations of you that you have to be strong as a man, and you always kind of look around and think, okay, am I behaving strong? Am I seen as a real man? And that causes a lot of distress and depression. And the same for women. Many women are constantly kind of thinking like, okay, am I looking well enough? Am I dressed nicely enough? Am I behaving womanly enough? And that also causes a lot of distress to the people, because there are expectations of them which they are anxious about, which basically makes them nervous. And that's the direct consequence of this traditional gender roles distribution and expectations. These two factors make lives of many families, many women and men, unhappy and unhealthy. So because of this imposed gender roles, people get to live the lives which do not really satisfy them, or which cause them health problems. So gender equality, what gender equality is ultimately about? Gender equality is about providing women and men with equal and equitable opportunities, powers, and resources for conducting a self-fulfilled life of their free and well-informed choice. This does not mean that some people, if they wish so, cannot choose to live traditional ways. Yes, there are some women and men who, even having some opportunities in front of them, still would choose to behave the old ways. But this should be their free and well-informed choice. That's the core idea. So gender equality does not replace previous roles with the newly assigned roles. Gender equality does not seek to impose specific new roles on women and men. What gender equality seeks to achieve, it seeks to actually provide a free and well-informed choice for people to choose the life which they want to live, which is not, you know, predetermined but by their body, which they received at the birth. And for this, they need opportunities, powers, and resources to make this free choice. They need to have information about the available opportunities on how they can organize their life. And they should not have constraints to make their free choice. There should not be social pressure, legal pressure, administrative pressure, or pressure of any kind on women and men to choose a life of their free choice. Do you have questions at this point? Yes, no?
Yes, please. Can I ask, because we already differentiate between sex, gender roles, and gender identities. So here, the gender equality, we just talk about providing men and women. Does it mean that we already refuse what we talked before about gender identity, because we are not just binary?
Yeah, that's right. Gender. You are right. Yes, that's right. You're right. It should be here providing people, not women and men only. You are completely right. It shouldn't be just women and men. It should be all other types of the gender identifications. You're right.
Thank you.
Yes, you are completely right here. Yes. Okay. Okay. Just several myths, you know, several, how to say, wrong ideas about the gender equality. So many people have misconceptions about gender equality or wrong ideas. So gender equality is not about making women like men or men like women. Gender equality is not about eliminating the differences between women and men and making everyone unisex. No, so gender equality does not seek to, you know, to produce a kind of neutral, you know, gender, so to say. That's not what gender equality seeks to achieve. Gender equality is not about making all women work and forget about the family. You know, some traditional societies, you know, some of these traditionally thinking people saying, okay, this gender equality is basically about taking women away from their families. No, gender equality is not about that. It does not seek to take women away from the families. And gender equality is not about making women leaders in family, society, and state instead of men. Gender equality is about making women leaders in all these areas, family, society, and state, together or in equal positions with the men. It's not, you know, to replace the domination and hegemony of men with the domination hegemony of women. Gender equality is not about that. Gender equality is about basically giving the opportunities, providing the opportunities for both women and men to be leaders in family, society, and state. When I will be referring to women and men, on this slide and all the next slide, I actually mean not just women and men, but people also with all other types of the gender identities. It will just take probably too much to, you know, to write all of the possible types of the gender identities here. But that's the idea. It's basically not just about people who self-identify themselves women and men. It's about everyone, regardless of the self-identification. So gender equality is about acknowledging that there is no one single standard of being a real woman or a man. Gender equality is about saying that there are many lifestyles, many life paths, and they are all good for both women, men, and people of other gender identifications. Gender equality is about educating that women and men are equal and there are no male and female professions and roles in life. So any role is good for anyone with any gender identification. And gender equality is about providing opportunities, powers, and resources to pursue a life path of choice. So gender equality is not just about, you know, writing in a law that everybody is equal. gender equality is about all of these elements: opportunities, powers, and resources. De facto, like for real, having these all elements to actually build a life of your own choice. So why do we have this gender inequality? So what are the root causes of gender inequality? Well, there are several key root causes of gender inequality. So first of all, many of our societies are full of obsolete man-centered traditions and man-centered views. We'll speak on several next slides about this man-centered, how the man-centered world looks like. But our life is basically full of such man-centered ideas and views. There are a lot of gender stereotypes and prejudices in the society. The social structure and fabric of our society is discouraging actually gender equality. If we look on the ways how many of the institutions are organized in the current society, so for example, how the family is organized, the work is organized, how the work week is organized, the work day is organized, the life is organized, many of these elements are actually built in a way which discourage gender inequality. Discourage gender equality. There are many unfavorable state policies and systems, so unfavorable to gender equality. So basically, many state policies and systems do not consider the gender dimension, do not consider the gender factor. And because of that, because they are gender blind, they actually maintain this situation of gender inequality. And finally, and that's a very big problem, that's disempowerment and underrepresentation of women and in decision making. So basically, women as the group which is lagging behind, which is vulnerable, does not have enough resources, powers to redress the situation, to correct the situation. And that's why all of these above elements, above problems, it is so difficult to change this situation, because the ones who need the change in the first place, the women, they do not have enough power to effect this change. So there are approaches, a number of approaches to advancement of gender equality. So we have the gender mainstreaming, gender analysis. They are connected. These two concepts are connected. We will discuss them on the next slides. Gender targeted and affirmative actions, empowerment of women, and awareness raising and education. So these are kind of the main approaches to advancement of gender equality. And now, gender mainstreaming. So before we start with gender mainstreaming, just tell me if you're all fine and with these basic concepts which concern gender equality, because now we will be discussing the gender mainstreaming as such.
Slava, we have a question in the chat.
Yes, in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I'll try to look in the chat, because when I look, you will see my chat. So let me just do it slightly differently. Just a second. Okay, where is the chat? In this. I see it. Sorry. Okay, can you give a specific example about the difference between gender equity, gender equality, and women's empowerment? Okay. So let me give you the difference between gender equity and gender equality, because women's empowerment is a separate category. It's not about it's not comparable with the two. So gender equality is basically distinguished from gender equity in the fact that gender equality means not some people, but many people think that gender equality is giving kind of the same to the people. When we speak about equality, people are saying that, okay, we have to treat everyone equally by giving equal amounts to everyone, equal amount of money, equal amount of, I don't know, of power, equal amount of something else. But that's the issue. In the given situation, when women in the past experienced so much inequality, giving equal now is not fair. Just to give you maybe a slightly different example. Imagine you have kids, and imagine you have a kid who already got like 10 chocolates, like in the morning, and the second kid did not get the chocolates. So now in the evening, you have another 10 chocolates to give away. Okay, not 10, maybe 20 chocolates to give away. So many people would say, okay, gender equality, you just give 10 chocolates to each of the kids. Is this right? So you give 10 chocolates to a kid who already got 10 chocolates, and another 10 chocolates to a kid who did not get the 10 chocolates in the morning. So is this right, or this is not right? What do you think of that? Colleagues, please feel free to talk.
Okay, can I explain a little bit my question? I'm working in public health. So when talking about how the gender equality related into the food safety. So it means the people, they produce the food safety from the farm to the table. For example, almost a female working in the farm, but the male working in the slaughterhouse. So how you see the gender equity here? I'm not clear this issue. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'll try to respond to your question more at length on some later slides, but now, as a general principle, what I will tell you, for women working in your industry, it might mean that in order to reestablish the fairness, you need to give women, in terms of salaries, for example, or in terms of, I don't know, of some free time, or in terms of the positions in management, more than to men, in order to re-establish the balance. So equity is about having the equal outcomes at the very end, about having the re-establish the balance. So that's the difference between equity and equality. Equality is kind of a general idea, is giving the same. Equity is not about giving the same. Equity is about giving what everyone needs, women in our case and men, need in order to ultimately come to the equitable outcomes, or to outcomes in which everyone, a woman, a man, a person of other gender identification, they enjoy the life, enjoy their rights on equal footing with the other people. So the difference between gender equality and gender equity in how we approach the work. So equality is not about, equity is not about giving the same. It's about giving differently in order to achieve the fair and equitable outcome. Women empowerment is how to get there, how it's a process. So the main idea behind women empowerment is to make the very agents of gender equality, the women in our case, those who need gender equality, to have them powers, to have them powers to achieve gender equality. Because what is happening now, so I can ask a very simple question. There are many countries in the world. Okay, let me give you the example of the United States, just to be very clear on that. You know, United States is a very economically rich country. However, in this economically rich country and strong country, in many respects strong country, there is no gender equality in many areas of life. So the question is, so why? Why there is no gender equality? You know, I think the United States cannot complain that they are poor, that there are no resources in the country to achieve gender equality. So the reason is not that there are no resources. The reason why there is gender inequality in the United States very much is because women do not have the same amount of power, the same amount of economic power, political power, social power, informational power, to actually counterbalance the men, to counterbalance the domination of the men. So women's empowerment is about providing this power to women, because the best way to ensure that there is gender equality is that, you know, everyone is balancing each other. You know, if women have the same amount of power and resources as men, they will make sure that this power and resources are not taken away from them. So they will be strong enough to make sure that the gender balance, gender equality is kept. I think I probably did not provide you enough kind of, you know, very practical now detail on how in your field you can apply this concept of gender equality and equity and empowerment. But on some of the next slides, I hope you will find an answer to this question. I will come back to this question a bit later, just to make sure that you got your answer later. Okay. Good. Okay, so let me return to the gender mainstreaming. So what is gender mainstreaming? I will start again my presentation. Okay, so it's this. Do you see now the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, just okay. So this is kind of in 5 points the explanation of gender mainstreaming. So socially, as we've just discussed, socially women in most cases have a different life experience than men because of varying social roles attributed to them and because of the different life opportunities. So this complex phrase basically means that women, when they live in their lives, they hear different things in their life about what they should do. They have different knowledge and experience which they receive. You know, there are some things which are passed, you know, from women to women. They are differently treated in kindergartens and schools. They face many gender stereotypes and prejudices in their life. So ultimately, women live a different life from men, and men live different life from women. So that is why their situation at any given moment of time is different from each other. The situation of women is different from situation of men. Just to give you an example, I think many women in many societies and countries experienced the unwelcome attention. So in their, you know, childhood or teenager ages, probably many women received some unwanted remarks about their appearance, received some invitations, you know, bad invitations, received some attention which they didn't want to get. So basically they were courted against their will. Many women have this experience. Most men don't have this experience. Most men didn't have an experience of women running after them and harassing them to have a relationship, while many women did have this experience. Of course, this shapes out a different life experience. This basically leads to different views about the life and about different basically views on how to behave in the life. So, for example, I think many men, when they are grown up, are not thinking that they could be raped at some point, of their life. When they walk, in the night at home, they don't think that they could be raped. Many men, many women actually do think about that when they return at night, to their village and the city. And these are the different type of thoughts which women and men have. because of the previous experiences, because of the way how the society is organized. So this is a kind of social differences between men and women. Then there are biological differences. So because of the sex-related characteristics, like women, biologically speaking, have different average parameters than men. So like women on average have lower height than the man, lower weight than the man, and so on and so forth. That's on average. Of course, there are some individual differences, but on average, that's the biological reality. And because of these differences, most things, and when I'm saying most things, I mean objects, like real objects like doors, cars, I don't know, everything, interact with women and men differently, and often produce different effects and impacts on women and men. And these are not only objects, these are also policies, laws, programs, everything in our life which interacts with humans, with people, interacts with men and women differently because of this combination of social differences and biological differences. So seeing and understanding these differences means seeing and understanding the gender dimension of things. So to put it in simple words, because various things interact with women and men differently, we have to understand this, that there is this difference in interaction with women and men. And gender mainstreaming is actually incorporation of the gender dimension, of the gender perspective, in everything which we do in our life, in all the policies, programs, services, in economy and public life. Just to stop here, just to explain you what is meant by this interaction with women and men. So let me ask you a simple thing. Let's imagine a building which has a heavy door, a door which weighs a lot, which is difficult to press this door to enter the building. Just tell me, what do you think? Will women and men have equal difficulties in using this door? Or a group, women or men, will have more difficulties on pressing this door and entering the building on average? What do you think? Hello?
I think women will have more difficulty because they have, in average, in their height and weight and strength, they will have more, push more to open the door.
Okay, so biologically, yeah, because of their average height and weight is lower on average than of men, they will have more difficulties on pushing this door. Very good. Now let me put you a more difficult question. Is there any social circumstance, any social condition which will make women, which will create for women even more difficulties in going through such a door? So beyond the biological, beyond the fact that they might have less power, physical power to press the door, social, is there a social issue which can create extra difficulties to women?
So maybe women spend lots of time to take care of children and do housework, so they don't. They will stay in within the house, so they will no need to use to open the door to go out.
Yeah, I didn't hear you well, but you mentioned that women quite often are the ones who take care of the children, right?
Take care of children.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So they don't need to open the door. They just stay at home.
Okay, they don't need to open the door. That's what you're saying. Okay, that's an interesting idea. Actually, the idea which I thought of was another one. Basically, that the women are more often than men moving through the streets or through the cities with the children. And this could be children, you know, in strollers. This could be children just, you know, walked by hand. But in both cases, you can probably imagine that entering a heavy door with your children by your side could be even more difficult than entering the same building with this heavy door without the children. So this is how, with the example of a door, of a simple door, how the biological factors and social factors can make the use of this door more difficult for a woman than for a man. Is it now more or less clear what is meant by this gender dimension or gender differences? Okay. If I may ask maybe the men also to react to that, because many women did experience this type of the situation and many men did not. So I just want to be sure that everyone is on the same page. So do you understand what does it mean that when I'm saying that that things interact differently with women and men?
Yes.
And some men's voices? Dear men participants to the training, do you understand this point?
Yeah, it seems we have two, Mr. Phúc and Jake.
Okay. So are you fine? Do you follow me on that? Yeah, I mean, the two men. Okay, I assume you do. Okay. So basically, gender mainstreaming is about introducing the understanding of these differences into the way how we think about everything, about the policy making, about how we organize the services, about how we organize the programs, how we organize the healthcare, everything. So we need to constantly keep in mind this idea that the way how we are going to organize a service, how we are going to organize a program, how we are going to develop a law will produce different effects on women and on men. So when we look at the official definition of gender mainstreaming, the United Nations definition of gender mainstreaming is this: the gender mainstreaming is a globally accepted strategy for promoting gender equality. Mainstreaming is not an end in itself, but a strategy, an approach, a means to achieve the goal of gender equality. So basically, this is to say that gender mainstreaming is a process, a method of achieving gender equality. So mainstreaming involves ensuring that gender perspectives and attention to the goal of gender equality are central to all activities. Policy development, research, advocacy, legislation, everything. So basically, gender equality is about having gender everywhere. Just if I can just paraphrase to put it in different words, gender mainstreaming means that gender equality should not be a separate field of the activity. It should not be a separate kind of, policy, a separate department. Gender mainstreaming means that gender dimension, gender perspective should be part of what is being done in all fields, in all areas, in all sectors. Everything which everything which has to do with humans, with people, has a gender perspective, has a differential impact on women and men. Here, if I may just maybe interrupt and take your questions. On gender mainstreaming. Did we all get it? Just let me know, please. That's one of the problems with the online trainings. It's difficult to follow on the emotions of the people. So if you can just tell me by words or writing in the chat if gender mainstreaming as the concept is clear.
There's one question I didn't know if you have answered yet, but Ms. Hong did ask, could you please elaborate gender dimensions?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So basically, that's gender. That was gender mainstreaming. The question from Mr. Fook, I think, is about gender analysis. And let me try to explain, to answer his question when I will present the next slide on gender analysis. And then I will provide a little bit of guidance on how the gender analysis could be carried out with regard to food safety. Okay. Is it fine? Okay. Let me then show the next slide with gender analysis. Gender analysis is a tool, a method on how to do the gender mainstreaming. So it's about a way how to mainstream gender in everything, basically. So let me provide several key points about the gender analysis. So I will be starting again the presentation. Okay. So window, share. You see the presentation with the gender analysis slide?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So gender analysis basically at two levels, at macro level, at the general level, and at micro level. So gender analysis at macro level is the analysis of the situation of women and men in a disaggregated manner. Disaggregated manner or disaggregated analysis means that it is done separately. Analysis on situation of women, separately analysis on the situation of men. And when I'm saying analysis of the situation, it's analysis of the situation in all relevant fields. So basically, when we do this macro gender analysis, it's the analysis on how women, how well women receive healthcare, how well they are employed, how well they are educated. So that's this macro gender analysis. And a separate analysis on men, how well men are educated, healthcare, employed, all the other things. And then we compare. Then we look on what are the differences. Are there differences between the women and men on how well they are treated by the doctors, on how well they are educated in schools and universities? So that's this big macro analysis on the situation of women and men separately. At micro level, gender analysis is the analysis of a specific document, action, or practice in a disaggregated manner. So basically, we are looking on a document, action, or a form, or a law, and we ask ourselves, does this document, does this action or practice advance the objective of gender equality? Does it improve the situation of women if women are discriminated in this particular situation? Or does it improve the situation of men if men are discriminated in a particular situation? So basically, gender analysis is about seeing not just a big mass of people, everyone is the same. Gender analysis is about seeing women and men separately for the sake of a document, action, practice, or reform. And we need gender analysis actually suggest to, when we look at the document or reform, to answer the following question: will this policy, document, practice, or reform improve the situation of women or men? And if it will improve, will it contribute to this goal of achieving gender equality? And just one more side remark, there is also a more sophisticated type of analysis, which is called gender plus analysis. So that's the analysis which looks on a particular document, action, or practice, not just from the perspective of gender, but also of some other criteria, such as age, race, disability, and so on and so forth. So basically, the gender plus analysis asks not only whether the policy or program will have different positive, negative effect on women and men, but also on older women or young women, older men, young men, rural women, urban women, on these subgroups of women and men, because there are differences also between these groups. And now I just want to ask you whether you managed to watch this video. I think you were recommended to watch it before our training. If you could just tell me, did you have a chance to watch it or not? And then I will switch to the question which was put by Mr. Duke.
Ms. Tang said that she hasn't watched the video.
And everybody else, should I just show it now?
Yes, I have watched.
You have? Okay. Anybody else who watched it?
I also watched it.
You did? Okay. Okay. So so we have 1 or 2 people who didn't watch, or there are more people? Because I see on my screen like the number that we have 13 participants, and only 3 or 4 responded. So I'm just not sure whether everybody else watched it or not.
If anybody has watched,
could you just type? Could you just type in the chat box whether you did or did not? If you did watch, just make a plus. In the chat box. Okay, so let me just not to show the entire video, because I think many have watched it. Let me just tell you what is in this video in 2 words, and then I will switch to the question which was given a bit earlier about food safety and gender. So this basically video, which you can watch a bit later, is on how in Sweden different municipal authorities, like city authorities, analyzed the various problems which they had in their municipalities from gender perspective. So, for example, there was in this video there is a story of a service of snow removal in one of the cities. So, you know, in northern countries it snows quite a lot, also in Canada. So basically, when the snow falls, the city authorities need to remove the snow from the streets so that the people can go to work, to school, and many other places. So traditionally, that was done in a very simple way. So the first streets to be cleaned were the streets, the central streets, or the big streets where the big cars would circulate. And in the second place, there were like smaller streets cleaned, and in the third place, all these minor roads were cleaned, like the small roads small roads which were leading to the kindergartens, to schools, some bike lanes. So basically the streets where the people would walkways, they were cleaned the last in the past. So what these municipal authorities did, they analyzed who is using which roads, who in terms of separately women, separately men. And they have discovered that the roads which they cleaned the first were actually mostly used by men in the cars. So men would get into their cars in the morning and drive through cleaned roads to the places where mostly men work, like banks, industrial enterprises, and so on and so forth. And vice versa, the roads which were cleaned the last were the roads which were used mostly by women. Women would in the morning take the kids and go to the kindergarten and schools first, and then go to the places where mostly women work, like hospitals, some social places. And these roads were not cleaned. Many of them were not cleaned by the time when they went out. So basically what happened, the way how these services of snow removal were organized, they were more beneficial for men and not for women. And that was the form of gender inequality. So what they did, they just changed the order, the priority of cleaning the streets. So now in the first place are cleaned the streets, the roads which lead to kindergartens and schools, and the roads which lead to the places where women were. So that's how this gender analysis was used in the example of snow removal in Sweden. Or another example, they looked on how the activities in a youth center were organized. And they've discovered that 2/3 of the beneficiaries of this youth center were boys, and only 1/3 were girls. So meaning that girls had less opportunities to use this youth center. And the reasons were two reasons behind that. So one, because the activities in this youth center were mainly for boys, the ones which boys liked, and not for the ones which girls liked. And the second activity, the second problem was that there were many security concerns. So this youth center was in a remote area, and girls were just afraid to go there in the night or when it was dark. So what they did, they changed the menu of activities, and that they put more lights around this center, youth center, so that girls also could use these services in equal manner with the boys. So basically, these are just two examples from this video, which you can watch, those of you who did not watch. But the idea is very simple. You analyze who is using, who is benefiting from your activity, from your work. Who is benefiting, meaning women and men, separately. And if you discover that women are benefiting less than men, or it could be vice versa in some situations, then you are doing something not right. You have to change something to make sure that women are using your products or services the same way as men. And now let me give you a possible guideline on how the gender analysis could be applied in the situation of food safety. So number one, food safety, and we will be taking the first biological component of this analysis. So we need to analyze, if we are analyzing the food safety area, does our understanding of food safety considers both the metabolism of men and women in equal manner? I will have on the slide an example later, but just to explain this, there was a study in Britain done in the United Kingdom, in England, which showed that the protocols for treating some heart problems were designed with men in mind. So basically the dosage, how much medication you give in the situation of a heart attack, was designed considering a man, a body of a man. and a metabolism, like the speed of the reaction in the body of a man. And as the result, these medicines given to women were producing bad effects. In some cases, there was a kind of overdosage of this medication for women, because, okay, women are smaller in many situations, in many cases than men, like smaller in terms of size of the body. So they need less active substance to, to make a change. So if you are designing a dosage which is considered for a man, who is, 80 kilos weight, and you give it to a woman who is 50 kilos weight, you can imagine that basically her body will receive the double effect than in case of a man with 80 kilos. So the same analysis, the same type of consideration could be asked, the same question could be asked about food safety. When we are establishing which elements, which foods produce effects on people and which of them should be prohibited or which should be regulated, do we actually think that the same amount of food can produce different effects on women and on men just because of their biology, just because of their, metabolism? Do we consider this, or we don't consider this? Or when we are doing these food safety trials or food safety tests, do we test them just on men? Are women in this picture? Second consideration with the food safety, which I would also raise, how do we organize the information about the food safety? An important part of the food safety is that people, the consumers, are aware about the contents of the products, of the foods, are aware about what they are buying and eating, are aware about what is healthy and not healthy to eat. And now the question is, when we inform the public about the food safety, do we inform the public only through the ways which are good for men, or we are also informing the public in the ways which are also good for women? So, for example, imagine we are informing about food safety in journals and newspapers which only or mainly men read. Will this information reach to women? Most probably not. And vice versa. What if we will be informing about the food safety parents who are coming to pick up their children in schools and kindergartens? Maybe special session about food safety in schools or in kindergartens. And mostly women come to pick up the children in schools and kindergartens, despite, the work on gender equality, traditionally still is like that. So if you want to reach out women with the food safety information, the best way to do it is to display this information or to communicate this information where the women come, where you can find more women than men. And the third consideration, in this chain of production of foods, how women are involved. Security considerations. Who is working in the food production enterprises? Mostly women or mostly men? If there are some enterprises where there are more women, mostly women working, do we consider the special measures for women on these enterprises? Do we kind of consider their biological parameters, and do we also consider the social parameters? So very simple question. So if women work in some food plant, and this food plant is in a dangerous area in the city, do these women who work on this food plant get a safe bus to get them back home safely, without being attacked or raped on the way? Do we basically think about enough toilets in this food plant so that women don't have to wait, in the row in this food plant? And another consideration is the economic consideration. Who is benefiting in your food chain from the production of food economically? Who is getting the most revenues from the production of food? Is it mainly men? Or also women are getting the revenues? Do they get 50-50 revenues? Or actually the food productions are mostly concentrated in the hands of the men? And men take the most advantage, economic advantage of the food production or food sales. So these are, some of the ideas, broad ideas, which you can discuss, which you can, analyze when you are looking at food safety and gender. So did it answer at least partially your question?
Yeah, I think that very clear. Thank you very much. So
yeah, of course. Yeah,
yeah, very, very good way. But I see it many way to thinking about that, a different way on different actor in a value chain. So first, so that's why we make the gender analysis very detailed for each the point of the value chain. And for example, at the slaughterhouse, even our project try to involve more female women working in the slaughterhouse. It's a two thing. The first thing we think is that maybe the female women they involved can have the slaughterhouse working more smoothly and more hygiene condition. Okay.
Yeah.
But the question is, that the people, the women have a chance to expose each other. It's the risk, like pathogen risk or chemical risk. So it means they become to some kinds of more serious disease compared with the men. It's the first one. Here the people they produce the food product, but for the second one, it's the people they consume products different things. Almost the female women they go to the market to buy the food, the quality of food, quantity of food decided by the woman. So how influence to the man? So that is I try to capture and really clear and our action plan about that. So thank you very much. Today I learned something, and we hope that we can discuss if we have time. Discuss later. Thank you.
Yeah. So just to summarize a little bit, and thank you for your feedback. But basically, the idea is whenever you have a human, a person, whoever it is, a worker in a food plant or as a customer who receives the foods, you have to see not just a human, not just a person. You need to see separately women, separately men, and actually ask yourself, do my products give equal benefits to women and men? Does the process of production of my product is equally safe and beneficial for women and men, or not really? And I just wanted to bring another example, the chemicals, there are a lot of chemicals used in the food production, in crops, in growing crops, for example. The same amount of chemicals could interact with woman's body and man's body differently. And for a man's body, a certain amount of chemicals can produce no harm. But the same amount of chemicals on an average woman's body can actually produce substantial harm. So all these standards of, dosage of chemicals, are they developed considering also women, or they are developed for just, for men? Or who was the basis? Who was the sample for developing the standards in the area of use of chemicals? Or another question, there are a lot of agricultural machines used for production of food. Much like these machines which work in the field, or machines which used for processing the food. So the height of these machines, the design of these machines, were they developed around the body of a man or around the body of a woman? Because in most cases, the practice is that they are developed around the body of a woman. And what if of a man, sorry. And what if a woman starts to use a particular machine? Will she feel comfortable with this machine? Will it be safe for this woman? Will she reach all the buttons on this machine? Will she be able to reach all the buttons, you know? So basically, the safety is not, should not be thought of like having in mind just, you know, a man as the standard. It should be thought of in this way, that the safety measures should be with man in mind, taking the parameters of a man in mind, and there should be safety thought with parameters of women in mind. And ultimately, you know, there should be some adjustments for women and for men, using some machines, doing some operations, or doing some activities. So that's the overall idea behind this gender analysis. Now, let me walk you briefly through step-by-step kind of analysis of how this gender analysis should be done, step by step. So, do you see now on the screens this slide, which is called practical step 1?
No, not yet. Still in the video.
Ah, still the video. Okay. Yeah, sorry. Let me try to relaunch it then. Strange. Okay. A window. Okay. Now, do you see this slide?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, what are the practical steps? So, practical step number 1, we absolutely, for a gender analysis, to make it possible, we absolutely need one thing, at least one thing, or the starting point is the gender disaggregated data. So, gender disaggregated data are the information, the data, broken down by women and by men. So, basically, we need to know how many women, how many men experience a particular problem. So, for example, imagine we are developing a new product or a new service. So, for example, we want to design, I don't know, a new food product for, you know, to be eaten in the morning. So now the question is, how many women and how many men actually don't know or often can't decide what to eat in the morning? So we need to know separately by men and separately by women. And most probably, if we do such an analysis, we will discover that many men actually don't care about what to eat in the morning. And many women actually are looking for healthy foods, for foods which have enough essential elements in these foods. So if we want to design a new product, like a yogurt, for example, for morning, I don't know, or a new type of drink for morning to be drank. So it's basically the question is, who is actually having problems in finding a good food in the morning? Or if we are developing a new cosmetic product, so what is the problem which we are trying to resolve? Is it the dry skin problem? Is it the problem that the skin is aging too fast? And who has this problem most of all? Is it women or is it men? And which are the type of the problems which these people experience? Or let's take like a policy. So we want to develop a new I don't know, city zone in the center. So we need to ask ourselves the question, which type of the constructions, which type of the buildings women want in the city, and which type of the buildings men want in the city. And you will probably discover that if you do this disaggregated analysis of what people want to be built in the city, that women most probably will want things like, you know, a good park to walk, a new school, a new kindergarten, maybe a new, you know, supermarket with healthy foods. And men will want something else. They might want a new bank, a new physical exercise gym, a new car park, different things. So depending on whom you are asking, women or men, you will identify different problems which women and men have. And this concerns everything. So basically, when you do this gender analysis, the very first thing which you need to know is the answer to the question, what women and what men think of a problem separately. What separately women think of a problem, what separately men think of a problem. That's if we are discussing something new to be developed. On something which is already existing. So we absolutely need to know how many women and how many men use our service, our facility or a product. So for example, if a supermarket wants to improve its work based on gender mainstreaming principles, the supermarket should not only have a figure how many customers come to the supermarket every day, but they should know of this number of customers, how many are men and how many are women. So there is one more example from Sweden, actually. It's not in the video, but I can tell you about this example. So there was a big supermarket in Sweden, which before they used the gender analysis, only were monitoring only the general indicators, on general, how many customers were coming to the supermarket. The very first time when they actually disaggregated this figure, when they found out how many actually women were coming and how many men were coming to the supermarket, they have discovered that there were substantially less women coming to the supermarket than men. So basically like 60–70% of the customers of this supermarket were men and only 30% were women. So basically that was the first time when they realized that there is a problem, with women. Women, for some reason, were not coming to this supermarket. And the first time when they realized this problem, when they had this data, this information, these figures on who is coming to them, disaggregated, broken down by women and by men. So that's step number one. So how will you do it practically? Basically, you do this very simple table, which you can see now on the screen. So if we want to organize how a university is doing with regard to gender equality, you need to ask your question, how many women, how many men enter the university? You need to ask yourself how many women and how many men graduate from the university. You need to ask yourself how many women and how many men are employed in the university. You need to ask yourself how many graduates of your university, for instance, get employed within the first 3 months after they graduate university. How many women and men are in senior and top positions in your organization, in the university or any other organization. And many, many other questions. So basically you can put many questions, but the main thing, you should get the numbers disaggregated separately by women and by men. So that was step number one. Step number two, you need to look at this data. So first step, you collect this data. You put them in the table. Second step, you look at this data, you look at these figures, and you need to see the differences. You know, if we have women and men in our society, approximately 50-50. Half of us are women, half are men. When we do these figures, we actually, if everything is well and good, we should see also the same figures, like 50-50, right? Because if we don't see these figures 50-50, it means that women or men for whatever reasons, don't use in the same amount, in the same share, your services or your institution. Oops, sorry. I've switched to the wrong slide. Let me come back here. Okay. So basically, when you at step 2, you analyzing the data, you need to see are there deviations from this proportion 50-50. If there are deviations, then there is a problem, a gender gap. So basically, the difference between the percentages of women and percentages of men is the gender gap. It's called gender gap. So when we are coming back to the video, which there was linked to this video, we need to ask ourselves how many women and how many men used public transport during night hours, or how many girls and boys use sports facilities in a remote location. Or if we are speaking about your institution or your business, how many women and men use your public service? Separately women, separately men. How many women and men use your product? And is there a gender gap? Is there this disproportion between women and men? So if I'm coming back to this example with the supermarket in Sweden. So on step number 1, they collected the data on women and men who come to their supermarket. On step number 2, they actually saw the difference. They actually saw this gap between men who were coming to this supermarket, like 60-70% of all customers were these men, and only 30% were women. So this difference between 30% and 70% is called gender gap between the genders. Okay, here I would like to bring to your attention a book which I strongly recommend you to look at if you want to understand how to understand better how to use this gender analysis and how to identify these gender gaps, these differences between women and men. So the book is called The Invisible Women. It's a recent book. Basically, when you look in this book, what the author of this book did, she collected the examples of all sorts of things which were developed, designed with only men in mind, with basically were designed for men, mostly for men and not for women. And in this book, you can find out the following examples. Sorry. Yes?
Yes. Sorry. So what is the name of the book? I don't see it.
And what do you see on your screen now?
Just a practical step 2, analyzing the data.
Oh, really? Okay, sorry, because I switched to another slide, but somehow it doesn't follow on the screen. Excuse me. I'll just start once again.
Yeah, we just saw it. Yeah, you just.
Now you see it, right? Okay. Yeah.
Strange. No. Now you turn off your slide.
Okay. Excuse me. Let me do it back. I know somehow these teams, when I'm switching the slides, they don't move on your end. That's strange. Anyway, I will start it again. Okay.
Yes, but at least we saw the invisible woman, right?
Do you see it now?
No, not yet. Yeah, now.
Now
yes.
You see it, right? Okay. Yes. So here is the title of the book, Invisible Women. It's called Invisible Women, Data Bias in a World Designed for Men. You see it on the top, right?
Yes.
So it's a recent book, like a year and something ago. So, and this book brings many interesting examples. So it's a full book of these examples. I brought to you just some of them. So, for example, this book tells that most offices, like business offices, are too cold for women, because the formula, the temperature, which was considered comfortable, was calculated based on metabolism of a 40-year-old man, 70 kilos man. women's metabolisms are generally slower than men's. So most women, and I actually also can confess the same was true for me when I worked in offices where most of my workmates were women. So I very often faced a situation when a temperature which was comfortable for me, most of my women colleagues considered it was too cold. So whatever was comfortable for me was too cold for most of my women colleagues. So we had to basically accommodate the temperature to the majority, in this case to the women. So yeah, it was a bit too hot for me, but ultimately I could resist that. But it was much more comfortable for the women who worked together with me. So that's now there is the idea is that there is no this comfortable temperature which is good for equally good for men and women. On average, women prefer colder temperatures with air conditioning than women, and this should be considered, this difference. Another example which I already brought to you. The women in Britain were 50% more likely to receive a wrong diagnosis following a heart attack. So there was a heart attack. The women were less lucky in getting the right diagnosis because the protocols were developed using only male participants. So everything around heart attacks was calculated, was designed with men in mind. So basically, all these figures which you see in the medical protocols, they are figures for men and not for women. So you can imagine when a woman would come to the emergency, and they would check her blood pressure and other parameters and check against the protocol, they would basically tell that, okay, some of the parameters are good because these figures were good for a man, but the same parameters for a woman mean that she had a heart attack. So basically, because of these wrong parameters, when a heart attack is diagnosed, the diagnosis of the heart attack was in place. So because of this, many women would not receive the right treatment at the right time. And in addition to that, many of the medicines which were developed for heart attacks, they were also developed with mainly men in mind. So it's only like the achievement of the last 2 decades that the pharmaceutical companies started to take a close attention on what is the gender composition on medicine trials. So another very notorious example, most cars are designed around a body of a reference man. So, you know, when you look on the video on these crash tests, did you pay attention to the fact that most of these artificial bodies which are placed in the cars, they are basically men. They're made of men, bodies of the men. So ultimately, when these safety features of the cars were developed, for example, you know, the distance, the average distance between your breast and the steering wheel, the height of the seat in the car, the composition of the different devices in the car, they were all developed based on the man. Or the airbag, you know, the strength with which the airbag strikes when there is an accident have been calculated taking into account the head of a man, not of a woman. So as the result of this kind of design, although men are more likely to get into an accident, to crash, of all the accidents, women were more likely to get serious injuries. So there were more women getting, and there are more women getting serious injuries than men, even though men are more often the ones who commit these accidents. And this is because the cars were not designed for women. They were mainly designed for men. Another example. So the most average smartphones, they are 5.5 inches long. And for women's hands, they are too long. So many women actually struggle, handling these long smartphones. Another example, speech recognition software. So when you are trying with your voice to give some commands to the to the devices, all these systems are mainly trained with male voices. So there was even a funny example. Then a woman who was driving the car said that basically her voice command system only listened to her husband. So the system did not listen to her, the driver, but to the husband who was sitting just next to her. And another figure, so women take up to 2.3 times longer than men to use a toilet. But the number of toilets in most of the buildings is equal for men and women. If we are thinking about equity and not equality, we shouldn't have equal number of toilets. We have 2.3 more toilets for women than for men, if we want to really be basically fair. So in most cases, the book finds that in most cases, the data about women either show that there is this kind of misconsideration of women, or that these data are just missing. There are no data about women, that most of the data are just about the men. So do you have the questions so far?
Yeah. Yes. I just because actually my background is business. It's not about development. So I see from the angles of companies. So just like for the car manufacturers or mobile phone manufacturers, they tend to serve the bigger size of customers, the end users. For example, perhaps I don't know. But perhaps the car drivers, there's more car drivers are men than women. Perhaps is the reason why they rather test on the man preferences. And the same with smartphone users. Men tend to update or buy change the mobile phone more quickly than women. So this is the reason why this is the motivation. This explains the reason why companies tend to test more on men and women. But perhaps with the gender equality, movement recently with gender analysis, own kind gender mainstreaming, it's it pushed the company to add gender into their decision making. And it's the same like before when we talk about CSR, social, responsibility. So it's the gender equality or gender mainstreaming, is a plus to the strategy that the company needs to take into account. Just from the really corporate viewpoint.
Yeah. So basically, I completely agree with that. But there are now two possible reasons why is this happening. So reason number one is actually that most probably in many places businesses even don't ask themselves this question on whether their products are actually serving everyone well. So in many situations this is an unconscious decision, But I agree that there are some companies maybe which do know that their products are more for men, are produced more for men than for women, but they just don't care. Just basically think, okay, the majority of our audience are men. Why should we care about the minority? So both situations are possible. But one important kind of issue here is that the situation when goods are basically produced for only one group and leave aside a vulnerable group, in our case women, is discrimination. It's basically discrimination. Basically, what is happening is that all these policies, products, they discriminate against women. And here, where not only the businesses should reconsider their role to be socially responsible, but also where the public authorities should step in and basically tell, like, look, guys, I mean, the products which are connected with the basic human rights and basic human needs, they should be accommodated to the needs of everyone. So let me just give you a very simple example, with people with disabilities. When we speak about the accommodation of buildings for people with disabilities, who will be using a ramp which is built for the people who use the wheelchairs? So of course it's mainly the people in the wheelchairs. It's the people with disabilities, or potentially some parents who are coming with their kids in the wheelchairs. So the majority will be still using the steps, not a ramp, But then the question is, so what does it mean that we shouldn't care about the accessibility of the buildings? Does it mean that if the majority of people who use the building use steps, that we shouldn't make our buildings accessible for people with disabilities? Of course, this does not mean that. Of course, the answer is the building should be accessible for everyone. Everybody should take this seriously, both the public authorities and the businesses. So even if a building or a service or whatever is used, to accommodate it for a minority, whatever this minority is, women, people with disabilities, or some other type of minority, even if it takes extra efforts, extra money, this should be done, because ultimately there's discrimination when we do not accommodate for all the groups, and it's not socially equitable for all these groups. So yeah, that's the consideration. I understand that for business it's maybe more profitable to produce just one simple model of cars and not really think about women or anybody else. But here where this public interest comes in, and here where this should be changed, and this could be changed both at the bottom up, meaning that the businesses themselves should become more conscious about this, but this also should happen top down. So basically meaning that the public authorities should regulate this field and actually demand that when you design your cars, you should have additional features which allow to adjust the wheel, the steering wheel, so that a woman, if there is a woman in the car, the steering wheel goes down, up, basically accommodates the body of a woman. So basically this all needs to be factored into the thinking of everyone. Okay, so let me give you another example on how this step 2 of the gender analysis could be done. So this is the example from Moldova, the country where I'm originally from. In Moldova, we worked in a big program which was about local development. So it was a program about how to get to the people's houses water, how to improve employment among rural people particularly, how to improve the educational outcomes, the performance in schools for children. And when we started,
yes. Sorry for interrupting, but yeah, your slides hasn't changed.
Okay.
Again. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, it's now.
Okay,
yeah.
now. It's okay
okay.
now. Yeah.
Now it's okay. Strange. Yeah, okay. Do you see a table now? A study on women and men? Okay. So that's a table. So basically, when we started our program, the very first thing which we did a study, a study on how women and men in local development in Moldova use different local services. So how many girls and boys go to schools, how many women and men are employed, how many women and men lack health insurance, how many women and men are connected to the water pipeline, how many women and men face problem of food insecurity. So basically situations when there is no food to eat. And we did this, we've collected this data then in a gender disaggregated manner. So exactly as I've just presented, so basically separately by women and men. And you can see on the slide the figures, what we have discovered. These are real figures from Moldova. So when we did these figures, we've discovered that after school, men are more often continue their studies. So they go to colleges or universities after the school. So 62% of men would go to the to these extra educational institutions after the school, and only 52% of women would go somewhere to study after the school. So this difference between 62% and 52% is 10%, and this is what is called the gender gap. So the gap, the difference between women and men. Then we've collected data on how many women and men are employed. And we discovered that 39% men were employed and only 30% women. Again, a gap of 9%. Then we looked at the figures on how many women and men were lacking a health insurance, insurance which would allow them to get some free of charge treatment. And here the situation was vice versa. In this situation, actually men were the ones who were lacking the health insurance more than the women. Usually it's the women who kind of in a disadvantaged situation. But in this particular situation with health insurance, men were in disadvantaged situation. So 4% less men had health insurance than women. Then we've analyzed how many women and men were living in the households connected to the water pipeline. And we've discovered that more men were connected to water than women. And we've also asked how many women and men, at least once during the past year, had a situation when they had nothing to eat. And 23% women responded that they had such situations, and 80% of men, again, more women than men, had these situations. So this is how these gender disaggregated data and their kind of analysis look like. So basically, the step number 2 has as the main objective to identify gender gaps. So we need to see these differences between women and men in figures. Okay, let's go to step number 3. Do you see step number 3 on your slides?
Not yet.
Not yet. That's okay. Okay. And now, now you do, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so once you identify, on step 3, once you identify the gaps, the next step is to understand why is that? Why do you have these gaps? What are the reasons behind this gap, these gaps? And this information should be collected through the qualitative methods. Qualitative methods, basically, you need to talk to the people. You need to basically ask the people themselves, and this could be done through various ways. Could be done through the social surveys, structured with structured questions. This could be done through the focus groups. This could be done through the consultations with the organizations of women, of rural women, of specific groups of women. But what is important for this analysis, you should in the first place ask the very people who do not use, who are left behind, who do not use your service or product, who spend most efforts and resources for using a particular product. So basically you need to ask those who are suffering most of all in the first place. Of course, you can also ask about the potential reasons, the experts, the people who work in a particular field, but who are not themselves part of the vulnerable group. But from the gender equality and human rights point of view, it is very important that even if you ask the experts come only as a supplement. They should only supplement the knowledge, the information, which you get from the vulnerable groups themselves. So at step 3, your main question is why you have gender gaps, which problems, which barriers cause this gender gap. Okay. So which type of the barriers could be the reasons for these gender gaps? So basically, here is the list of potential barriers. It could be legal barriers. So, for example, there could be a law which specifically limits women or men in some situations from using particular services or goods. I'll just give a very simple example. In many legislations in socialist countries, there is a list of professions which are prohibited for women. I don't know if this is true for Vietnam, but in my country, in Moldova, until recently there was such a list. So there were a list of professions where women could not work. So that's an example when the specific legal provision just directly barred women from working in particular areas or in particular fields. So another type of the barriers which could cause these gender gaps, material. So you can have some specific provisions in law, but you might not have the institutions or the service providers to deal with the problem. So an example of this could be the special crisis center for the survivors of domestic violence. Now, in domestic violence happens in all countries against women, gender-based domestic violence. And in many countries, there are actually legal provisions on combating domestic violence. So I can give you, again, an example of Moldova, the country I'm originally from. In Moldova, there is a special law about combating domestic violence. And this law actually provides that the local or public authorities should provide help to the survivors of domestic violence. Basically, should establish shelters, special centers for women who want to escape from domestic violence. So this provision is in law, but these institutions, these shelters were not created. So they are just not in place. So legally, on paper, they are there, but materially, they are not there. So they are just lacking. So another type of the barrier could be administrative barriers, administrative and bureaucratic barriers. What does it mean? So there could be something in law, there could be even an institution to deal with the problem, but there is so much bureaucracy, there are so many administrative hurdles that women, specifically women, cannot basically use this service. So let me give you another example. Again, in Moldova, there are special agencies for unemployment. So these are the agencies who basically should help people to find new employment, or the same agency also registers the unemployed people to give them indemnizations, to pay them some money, basically, while they are looking for the job. And these activities, these centers are in law. They are prescribed in law. They are physically existing. So there are these institutions, buildings. There are some people working in these institutions. But the problem is that many of these, the procedure to get your unemployment benefit is very difficult. You have to collect many documents. And to collect these documents, you have to run around through many institutions. You have to go to the mayor's office, to kindergarten, to school, get various certificates. So basically women, particularly women, don't have time to collect all of these documents. And when we look at the data on how many women and how many men are receiving unemployment benefits in Moldova, we discover that there are more men receiving benefits than women, even though there are more unemployed women actually than men. And why is that? Exactly because of these bureaucratic and administrative barriers. Because for women, it's particularly difficult to collect all of these papers and bring them to this unemployment office. The next potential barrier could be economic. Economic, basically, you need too much money to do something. An example is starting a business. In many countries, I'm sure this is true also for Vietnam, women in general have more properties and more monies at their disposition than men have more properties and monies than women. So for men, to start a business, even a small business, it's easier because they have more money at their disposition. Another example is the bank loans. When you go to a bank, many banks require collateral. So basically a guarantee that you will repay a loan. And many men have something which they can offer to the bank, like a house or a car. And many women do not have those. That is why many women actually don't get the loan, because they don't have some goods which they can offer to the bank to get a loan. Then the barriers could be physical. So I can tell you a very simple example from my own life. So a very good friend of mine, she worked in a company which was in a very modern building. She worked in an IT company, which, modern building, very nice building. But that's exactly the building which had these very heavy doors. And not only heavy doors, but also narrow doors. So what happened? She got married. She had her child. And she actually liked her job, so she wanted to, I think after 6 months of staying with the child at home, she decided to resume her work and her company. And she attempted to come to the building with her child in a stroller, in a wheelchair. And she could not enter the building. First, because the door was very difficult to operate, and second, because the doorway was very narrow. She could not get into the building with the child in the stroller. So that building was basically physically problematic, inaccessible for her. So she could not work at her company. Okay, at some point they found a solution, so she started to work remotely from her home. But that's an example when there is a physical barrier, physical accessibility for women to use a particular good, a place to basically go to work, to be employed. Another potential barrier are social, cultural, or security barriers. So these are basically the intangible barriers. So there is not a physical barrier, but something which imposes some pressure on women to do or not to do some things. So, for example, many girls do not go to some professions because people around them tell them that these professions are not good for girls. And this is the type of the social barrier. So these girls, these women get this social pressure not to go to a particular job. Or many women, when they are subjected to domestic violence, do not seek help, do not look for help. They continue to live and experience this domestic violence. Why? because in many cultures, particularly traditional cultures, it's considered a shame, you know, to talk to somebody external about problems within your family. So women just, for social reasons, do not look for help, basically continue this bad life. And another potential barrier is quality. There are situations when some services or goods which are kind of provided for everyone, but they are of lower quality for women than for men, or they're just not accommodated by quality for women and for men. So basically, these are the types of the barriers which could be the reason behind gender gaps, which could cause these gender disparities between men and women. Questions?
No, it's okay. Yeah, it's...
You're fine, so far fine. Okay, okay. That's good. Okay, then the next one. How you do it practically? Basically, again, that's a simple table which you can use. Of course, there are much more sophisticated ways how to do it, but these are very simple ones, which you can use it, like, you know, starting from today. So you just make a table where on the left you have all these potential barriers which men and women can face in accessing your good or service, and you just write down some signs or the texts. I can give you a small example of this. So here is the example. So let us ask you a question. So why there are few women in IT? And when we respond to this question, we fill in this chart like that. Okay, so we ask ourselves, are there legal barriers? So are there laws which prohibit women or men to work in IT? And the answer is probably no. So I think in Vietnam, probably there are no laws which prohibit men or women to work in IT. Okay, so we write here no. Next, are there material problems, like availability of facilities and stuff? So basically the question is, is the problem that there are no IT companies where women can work? And the question probably is no. I think there are enough IT companies in Vietnam where women and men can work. So this is not a barrier. So there is no problem with lacking IT companies. Then the next question, are there any administrative or bureaucratic barriers? So do women need to make too many administrative steps to submit too many documents in order to get to the IT? So for men, most probably no, but for women, I'm not sure. That's why I put here the question mark. So it depends on the country. So for example, in some countries, women might need to might have extra administrative and bureaucratic barriers. So just to give you an example. So again, from Moldova, I will give an example. So in Moldova, there are now many initiatives on trying to attract young girls into IT. But in order to do that, so for example, there are some schools, special summer schools organized for girls in IT in some rural areas in Moldova. But in order to participate in these schools, you need to collect some papers. You need to collect them from the school itself. You need to get a special certificate from the Department of Youth. And basically, women are very often, I would say, kind of shy to go to a department. They kind of don't have courage, basically, to go to this Department of Youth and demand this paper. And this paper, it's an unnecessary paper, basically. You don't need it really to go to this summer school. But for whatever reason, this paper is demanded. And somehow in Moldova, it affects more girls than the boys. So most boys don't find it problematic to go to this department and get this paper. But many girls are hesitant to go to this department and get this paper. So that's an example of a potential reason which could be an obstacle for women to get into the IT. Again, here is a question mark. The answer could be no, but the answer could be yes. Now, economic affordability. And here where I think everyone might face problems, like both men and women. So I don't know whether in Vietnam there are many opportunities to study IT in the university free of charge. But in most universities, like here in Canada and in Moldova, these studies cost money. So particularly in IT. And they cost quite a lot of money. Again, because women mostly have more money at their disposition. And in Moldova, there is also such a phenomenon that if in a family, there is a boy and a daughter, and the family has money to send to the university just one, they, in most cases, prefer to send the boy to the university and not the girl. So to pay for the studies of the boy and not of the girl. So that's how, when there are limited resources, boys are more prioritized than girls. So that's why here in this line, we have 1 plus against men and 2 plus against women, meaning that for women, the economic affordability of studying IT is worse, is less. So women have less economic opportunities than men to study IT. Okay, physical accessibility. Again, I do not know how, again, in Vietnam, but in many places around the world, these IT institutions to study IT are mostly concentrated in the capital or in big cities. And for many girls who do not live in the city center, and women, girls and women, it is more difficult to get to these institutions, like, for example, from suburbs, because less women drive cars than men. So in many countries, men get their first car at much younger age than women. And again, in Canada, for example, also in Moldova, in Eastern Europe, many young men have a car, like young men, like students. Not a new one, like mostly used ones, but when you are a student, like 18, 19 years old, many already get their first used car, boys. So for them to go to drive to a university which studies IT is easier than for the girls which don't have these cars, and they have to use either public transport or to get somehow differently to this place. And again, particularly the IT educational institutions, they most often, you can't find them in small cities or in small places. Most of these institutions are concentrated in big cities or in the capital. That's why here, this could be a barrier. This could be one of the barriers for women, for girls, to get their studies in IT. Next one, social, cultural, security pressures and concerns. For men to go to study IT, it's not a problem. But in many societies, it is believed that IT is not for girls. So there is a lot of social pressure on girls to not go and study IT. So that's why we have 3 pluses here, like three yeses in a way. So triple yes. And time constraints. For men to study IT or to work in many IT companies, actually before COVID, many IT companies had a lot of the extra work. So requiring their workers to work overtime. But if you are a woman who has kids, for women it becomes a bit difficult to take extra work or to work, on urgent IT projects, and these are quite common in IT industry. So basically, these household and childcare responsibilities, they become a kind of social constraint on women to work in the IT industry. And there could be some other considerations as well, but this is kind of the type of the table which you can fill in order to identify potential barriers for women or for men in particular area. And of course, you ask all of these questions in the first place when you are speaking about women. You ask women whether they have a particular barrier in studying IT, for example. And you don't ask the women in the first place. You don't ask the women who do study in IT. In the first place, you ask the women who do not study in IT. Those who want it but do not study, because they will tell you the most about the problems and the barriers. Do you have questions to this table?
No, I don't have a question, but I would like to have a comment on this.
Yes, please.
I think absolutely when we take a look at the barriers for the women in the IT study, and also the story you bring up for the book on the data bias, I think that is a very close relations in terms of, raising the question, who's making data? Who is analyzes data? And also the same as the policy making, who's making policies? So
yes,
we see the male dominance, in every kind of society, or this is a global issue that we will, like a tail program in enhancing, gender equality in both, instead of just thinking ahead of the data itself or policy making itself. So I think this is a global issue, but I definitely will find the book to read. But because you are living in a feminist government country, Canada, so could you please share, some more sources on gender plus analysis?
Yes, absolutely. Yes,
will help us to understand about, the efforts that the Canadian government is doing the gender analysis, not only for men, women, or other gender identity, at the grassroots level, but also on the policy maker at the highest level, to make their own decision on how to empower women in their own country. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so I completely agree on your first comment, which is that all of this analysis should be done with women in the leading roles.
Yeah.
So not only we should ask women in the first place, and particularly those who suffer in the first place, but also all of these processes of collecting the data, analyzing them, drawing conclusions should be done with women in the leading roles. That's very, very right comment. So it's not about what we do, but it's also about how we do. So it shouldn't be just about women or about gender. It should be with women in leading roles. That does not mean that there should be no men, but that means that there should be an equal or even sometimes bigger number of women if a particular problem concerns mostly women. There could be situations when, because gender is not just about women, gender is about also men and also other identifications. So there are some problems which may concern more men. So now this table has as an example an IT. But in one of the previous slides, I showed you that on one particular problem in Moldova, men were more affected than women, and that's the health insurance. So men in Moldova, less men have health insurance than women. And that's a problem, because when these men get to the healthcare and they don't have health insurance, they will either pay basically too much, they will have to pay out of their own pocket, or they will just not treat themselves. They will just refuse treatment and will die, some of them, or will have big problems with their health. So that's a problem, a gender problem, but which is about men. And here the analysis would be like that. So what are the problems? The question would be like that. Why men in more numbers than women don't get the health insurance. And again, we've studied a little bit this problem, and there were two reasons basically for that. Reason number one was that men, because of these social stereotypes, consider that strong men should not complain about health problems, basically. So, and they basically just don't care, have this attitude of not caring much about the health. And there was another reason also. Another reason was that in Moldova there is a lot of shadow economy. So there are many enterprises which pay salaries to the people in envelopes, basically unaccounted salaries. So on paper you get, I don't know, $100 pay per month, but in addition to this salary, $100 official, you get in an envelope another $300. And one of the phenomena in Moldova is that men are more willing to take a job which pays them more, but which is unofficial. So men prefer to take a job where there are more money, but unofficial money. But if you are not officially employed, you don't get a health insurance from the employer. Because one of the ways how you get health insurance, when you work officially somewhere, you get the health insurance. If you work somewhere unofficially, you don't get health insurance. So many men kind of adventure into, they want to win more money now. And they just don't care about the fact that they don't have health insurance. And vice versa, women are choosing more stable and more kind of secure jobs. So many women prefer, a job which is less paid, but it's formal, official, on paper, and that they get all the necessary benefits which are associated. So that was another reason. So in Moldova. So basically, quite often there are several reasons, several barriers to a particular problem. So just coming back to the comment number which you've made, it's absolutely important that those groups which are most affected by a particular problem are in the lead in collecting the data, analyzing the data, and finding solutions to that. Yes. On Canada and gender-based analysis plus, there are several considerations. So gender-based analysis plus is a more sophisticated instrument than gender-based approach. So we can discuss this on our next training. I will be happy to provide more information on that. Canada has many good examples on applying GBA plus, gender-based analysis plus, but it's still yet not at the stage when everything is using this analysis. So there are still many places, departments in Canada which are in the process of applying gender-based analysis plus. So basically, there are positive examples. We will discuss them, but there are also some problems which are still to be resolved. So next training, I'm basically not making note myself. We can organize around gender-based analysis plus, and yes, we'll discuss how it's done.
Yeah, I think there is one more thing that belongs to your strength in terms of your dissertation on gender and law. So we used to mention about gender equality in paper or lawmaking legislation. So gender de facto is really problematic now. If you have any analysis or evidence, please share with us in the next training. I think it would be good for all of us.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we have just very few slides left, and I will finish because it's time already for our training. So step number 4. Do you see step number 4 on the slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So once you identify the barriers, once you find the question on the answer to the question on why you have gender gaps, you have to design measures to remove these barriers. And one important consideration here that in most cases, these measures should be targeted. targeted towards a particular gender. So this should not be measures general for everyone, but this should be measures specifically addressing women, the situation of women, or men, depending on which group is vulnerable in this particular situation. So just to give you an example, so let's come back to this example with men who don't have healthcare insurance in Moldova. So we've identified that more men don't have it. Now, when we think of the solution, we are not thinking on what do we do to address everyone, but we think specifically about men. So, for example, one of the solutions could be organizing an informational campaign. But this informational campaign should not, be, for example, on TV for everyone. We should go to these places where these men are concentrated. So the most efficient information campaign will not be through general TV or through general radio or through general newspapers, but it will be a specific kind of events, activities, informational activities at the enterprises or in these sectors where we know that there are many men who don't care about their health or who just want to earn more money and not be registered officially. So we go to this specific enterprise and we speak to this specific man. So this is an example of a targeted approach. Then let's come to the example with the IT. When we identify what are the barriers for girls to go in the IT, we should think specifically on how we address the problems which are faced by girls. So if one of the problems is that there is an IT university, but it's too far, so basically many girls cannot travel there because they don't have private cars, well, maybe there is, you need to organize a special bus. Maybe you need to organize a special bus from the university, which will circulate to the places where mainly there are more girls living and collect specifically girls, not the boys, to get to the institution. So basically, that would be a targeted measure for girls in this place to address this barrier. So the solutions should be targeted. That's the main message when we are thinking about removing the barriers. And as we already discussed during the previous conversation, this measure should be designed jointly with the group left behind. Not men should develop solutions for women. It should be the women and men, along with women, developing the solutions. So women should be in the main place in developing solutions for women, and men should be in the main place in developing solutions for the men. Okay, and basically the last slide, that's the last slide. We need to be clear that many of the gender gaps, and that's step number 5, many of the gender gaps are caused not by a single simple barrier, a bad law or a bad bureaucrat, but very often by multiple and complex problems, so like social stereotypes or prejudices. And such barriers are called systemic or structural barriers because they are part of the system. So in step 4, we were discussing mainly the specific, solutions, specific measures on how to remove specific barriers. But some questions or some problems are very, very complex, which you cannot resolve just by a bus or just by a simple informational campaign. You have to basically think and implement a complex reform. So, for example, one of the big reforms to solve the problem with girls in the IT could be, well, you probably need to look to revise the school curricula, or you need to revise the school programs. Maybe many girls do not want to go to the IT, because in the school they too often read or hear that girls should not go to IT, that they should think of becoming teachers, doctors, and babysitters. Maybe there should be a whole school reform in order to change the situation. So along with the specific solutions, we should also think about systemic and structural solutions in order to address the gender gaps or the gender problems. So here, I think I will stop. Actually, that's the end of the presentation. And yeah, now the time is for you to put additional questions or provide some comments.
No, actually, during the your presentations, we somewhat provide comment in the chat box. Just
okay, I'll just check. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No, it's okay. But most of them are translation into Vietnamese.
Gender plus analysis. Okay, I can send more resources. That's fine. Yeah, there are quite a number of guidelines on how to do the gender analysis, and in Canada there are some guidelines on how to do gender plus analysis. So I can send it to you, basically to the group through the organizers. Okay. Okay. Other questions?
Can I add one question related about the step 1?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that thank you very much. Very clear about the gender analysis. Very important, step by step. But I think that the first step, I think, is very important. Can you explain a little bit how we make sure that the data quality and accurate? Because if the data quality is accurate, not correct, so it may be wrong for the analysis.
I understand. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So without gender disaggregated data, and that should be crystal clear, if you don't have gender disaggregated data, you don't see the problem. That's number one. So you cannot do gender-based analysis without having the gender disaggregated data. So that's now the starting line. How to collect this data? Here, there is no a single solution. Basically, there are many ways how you can collect data. So some data could be taken from the census. Every country runs a census every 10 years. So you can take some data from them. There are sociological surveys which you can organize. Many of these data which I was using during the presentation, actually many data in the field of gender equality are collected through surveys, so sociological surveys. If you cannot afford this, because they cost money. To have a good sociological survey, you need quite a lot of money. There are some cheaper ways. You cannot ask many women. You can organize some focus groups, some structured interviews with the women in order to collect some data. This data will not be very accurate. This is true. Of course, if you're asking just 10 women and not 1,000 women about the problem, you can get some distorted data. This is true. However, it's better to have at least this data than to have no data. So basically, my proposal, and actually the general proposal, is that you should collect whatever you can. If you have more money, more resources, collect more accurate data through sociological surveys, through special forms. If you cannot, organize focus groups, organize interviews, organize just meetings with women, which will provide you maybe not very accurate data, but at least you will understand the key problems, the key tendencies, the key ideas. And yeah, that would be my response. So any data is better than no data, and more expensive and accurate data are better than less expensive and less accurate data.
Okay, thank you very much. So can I add the last question? But, I think that very related about our project at the moment. So we are working in a multi-sectoral. It's a different background. Then the female and male together. Okay, like the agriculture sector, human health sector, animal health sector. So we are sitting in the same team. They have different view, different knowledge. So how somehow it's the same idea. So in the gender analysis, for example, women in the agriculture maybe they have different perspective compared with the health sector perspective. How we convene them each other. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so it is possible that if you are working in a team, diverse team where you have men and women, that men and women can have different views on how to provide the service or how to organize the work. So basically, the idea at the very beginning, the idea was that gender equality does not seek to create a unisex approach, no. An approach which necessarily should be unique or one single approach for everyone. No. What gender equality is actually suggesting that if, for example, men and women see resolution of a problem slightly differently, maybe you should try both options. Maybe you should not necessarily now develop a single approach to a problem. Just try out 1 or 2 or 3 approaches, which both women and men propose. So basically, the gender equality says that you shouldn't try to create a single view of how it is right to do. Vice versa, you should try to create more opportunities on how to approach a problem. So let me give you an example. So in Moldova, there was in a village in which I work, there was a discussion on how to organize the kindergartens in the village. And there were exactly the situation which you mentioned. So there was a group of men counselors, local counselors, who were suggesting there was a big kindergarten in the middle of the village. And they were saying that, okay, let's build one more room in this kindergarten so that it can harbor more children. And there were a group of women counselors which were saying, look, let's build not an additional room to the big kindergarten, but let's make a small kindergarten on the very far end of the village with the same money. Because they were saying, look, I mean, if you add this extra room in the kindergarten, we will not be able to go to this kindergarten because it's too far. There is no transport in this village. So basically, the families with children who live far away from the center of the village will not be able to use this even bigger kindergarten. So there was these 2 solutions, basically. So if you can do the following thing, and that's what we advised them at that point. We suggested them that in this big kindergarten, that they don't build the whole new block, but they just take one of the auxiliary rooms and rebuild it to add just a small number of kids. Not everyone, but small. But at the same time, with the remaining money, that they should open a kind of a small care center for kids in this faraway village, not village, but end of the village, which would not work full time, but at least work half time. Because, okay, the resources were limited. They could not do both in the same amount, but they could split the money and actually accommodate to one view and accommodate also the other view. So if women and men come with the different views, okay, that's fine. That's it's not. It doesn't mean that somebody should win in this competition. It's not a competition actually. It's let's look for the ways to accommodate everyone. I don't know if it responds to your. Was the question about that?
Okay, thank you very much. So I think that little bit more or less, but case by case. Why I bring this question? related about the COVID-19 pandemic at the moment. The cause of the virus, we don't know yet where the sources or the wildlife or domestic animal or leaking from the laboratory. So they have different views. So that's why they argue who and the gender, the issue here, who is the more affected, a woman, a man, or something like that, or even vaccinate at the moment. So that we solving one is a health issue which bring different sectors working together. So that's why they need to sharing their leadership and respond each other. So that is very important, how to agree and bring all the idea into one. So that's I'm thinking that how the related, it's a gender-based can solve this issue. Okay, but a little bit complicated the process, but thank you very much today. I learned very much actually for our project at the moment, and we hope that they can communicate it even colleague here in the future, maybe more understand about the gender perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, just wanted to once again stress, this is just a very, very simple and basic discussion about gender mainstreaming and gender analysis, because again, in 2-3 hours, it's not possible to go very much deep into this. As I was mentioned, people are studying 1 year at least here in Canada, and even 2 years on just this gender equality and gender mainstreaming. So it's a big topic. We have many things still to discuss. So please let me know, write in the message what else you want to discuss during the next training, so we can organize one more in July, and we can discuss these other issues.
Okay, thank you very much.
So thank you, Slava. Can you move to the checkout questions?
So basically, I have my checkout questions, which are not in the form which WUSC asks us to prepare. So my questions, I don't think we have a lot of time to discuss them.
Yeah.
But basically, I just want to make sure that you can respond at least to yourself now. You have a response to these 5 questions. Do you see the questions?
No.
Or just no? Okay, sorry. Let me try it once again.
People can try to type into chat box.
Basically, I mean, it's too many questions, so it's 5 questions. But I just want to make sure that you can now tell that you know what is gender dimension.
Mm-hmm.
You know what is gender mainstreaming in general lines, what is gender analysis, what are gender disaggregated data, and what is gender gap. So basically, just briefly, if you can comment on chat whether now you know the answer to these 5 questions. Now you know what are these 5 things, and then I can be in peace so that with myself that we've achieved some good results.
Okay. Yes, actually, it's already 11:12 here. During mostly the lunchtime here in Vietnam. And can you please share the post training survey, so that this is a requirement from the WUSC, who asked us.
So basically, I have the text, but I just don't know how you will be filling it in. So
no, we made a Google Doc.
You have. Okay, good. That's good. Okay,
so anyone can be very easily answer. So thank you, Slava, and thank you all the participants here. So before checking out, we have two things to do. The first one is each of us, we need to fill in the form about post training, so that we can report back to the sponsor of the event, which is WUSC, and also we need pictures of a photo of the event. So please turn on the videos, and then we can take the pictures. Yeah, Changfa, please send the survey, please, to the chat box, so that everyone can answer right now. Because from our experience, once people leave the meeting rooms, it's more difficult to get the feedback.
Yeah.
Anyone who have the survey? Changfa, do you have it?
I have sent it in the chat box. Please check the chat box for the link.
Okay, please, take 1 minute to fill in. So our primary focus of the activities today, it's about the gender equality, right?
Yeah.
So can we take the photo before we filling the form? So it's going to be easier for everyone.
We are filling the form. So
can you please turn on the camera? We're going to take the picture before we filling the form. So we can do the form later.
what about others? Hà My, Quỳnh Như, Chiêu Dương, Thảo Phương, Vân Nguyễn. Okay.
Okay. So 1, 2, 3. Everybody say cheese. Okay. Thank you so much.
Vân just now here. Okay, I took many. Okay, please continue to fill the form, and perhaps just type in the chat box some of the appreciation for our trainer, please.
Okay, so on behalf of the VID, I would like to send sincerely thanks to Mr. Slava Balan for their enthusiastic sharing today, and for their participation of Mrs. Chương, the former director of VID, and thank you so much for attending today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Thank you. I finished the form, so I don't know how about others. I finished the form.
Yeah, we have received 3 answers, so please keep filling.